Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is Grace Lauren Wong, and you are listening to episode 82 of the Trauma Dump Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Here at the Trauma Dump Podcast, we seek to answer the question, what is mental health? How do I take care of my own, and how do I support others? And today, we will be discussing burning bridges to build boundaries with our very special guest of the week, Caitlin Blunnie. Please go check her out. She is Liberal Jane on all social media. She is amazing. We're going to be talking about generational trauma, breaking cycles of abuse, relationships, and starting over. So please go check her out after the episode and show her some love. She is an amazing illustrator and advocate for all things mental health and very cool politics. So please go check her out. And remember, if you'd like to share on the show, please message us in our Discord in the podcast participants channel along with your unique experiences, and we will match you to the right episode. And just a quick disclaimer before we start this episode, I am not a licensed health professional, okay? This podcast only seeks to create community and further understanding of these topics that are so often overlooked and extremely misunderstood. If you or a loved one are in need of medical professional help, we have so many different resources in our descriptions and on our Discord server, so please go join us over there. All right, let's get into this interview. Hi, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here too. Can you please introduce yourself to all of us? Who are you? Where can we find you on the internets?
So my name is Caitlin Blunnie. I go by Liberal Jane on social media. Search me anywhere, you're probably going to find me. I am an artist and activist living in Baltimore, Maryland, in the US, and I use she, her pronouns.
Amazing. Just a quick disclaimer to all those people that are new to the podcast. I'm not a mental health professional, and neither is she. So please take our advice and our knowledge as just lived experience and not as, textbook facts. So today we're going to be talking about boundary setting and how to take care of yourself when life is kind of throwing everything at you. Before we start the interview, are you comfortable with discussing your personal experiences?
Yes, and thank you so much for getting consent beforehand.
Of course. To make sure that I'm not crossing any of your boundaries and respecting your experiences, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. We can also take a break if you need to take a break, get some water. And if you feel uncomfortable with answering any question, just let me know. I promise I'm not going to get offended. I'll skip it and we'll move on to the next one.
Wonderful.
So, can you paint us a picture of your upbringing? What were the unspoken rules or dynamics in your family?
Yeah, so to set the scene, I grew up on Long Island in New York. I grew up very low income, and so class disparity, especially living on Long Island, was a big theme for me. And in addition to growing up low income, I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional house with a lot of emotional, verbal, and financial abuse alongside periods of neglect. So there were stretches where we didn't have electricity, or cable, or water, and other basic needs just weren't getting met. The other large part of my upbringing was the impact that a narcissistic parent can have on the whole family unit, especially when you add in, systems of oppression and power like prison, mental health episodes. And so from a pretty young age, I was parentified. I would say by the time I was 12 or 13, being the oldest also meant that I was a pseudo provider. I definitely had more of a parent dynamic with my siblings than an older sister dynamic. And that's very common in dysfunctional households. Everyone takes on a role.
Girl, I resonate so heavily with that because I'm also the oldest and I have two younger brothers, and yesterday was my birthday. And I'm finally like rebuilding those connections with my siblings because we were also raised by a narcissistic mother. And I completely cut all contact to her about like 2, 3 years ago. And I'm finally like rebuilding that relationship with my brothers where it's like a sibling dynamic for the first time in our lifetime. And where it's not obligation, but it's like a want to, have interactions with one another. And it's really great. And my brother called me for the first time like yesterday to wish me happy birthday, and he actually talked to me for a while, and I was like, wait, is this what
Mhm.
it's like to have a brother? I was just so excited that my brother wasn't calling me for like needing something like, hey Grace, I need money for gas, or hey Grace, I need like this thing, can you help me with this? It was like wishing me a happy birthday and just telling me about his life. And that honestly, I was just so touched by that. Have you had like an experience like that recently with your siblings where you're just like, wait, the dynamics are shifting?
I love that you talked about that because I also had a falling out with my siblings. It's been about 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. And I am trying so hard to create that dynamic, and it's just so hard. Especially being single and dating again. Like my siblings are 4 and 5 years younger than me, so they're in their 20s. And I'll talk about like, yeah, I went on a date. Here's what I'm wearing, or talk about sort of the silly things I get into in my day to day, and they are so embarrassed of me. Like, and so I think that relationship's getting there, but there's still this level of like, oh, I see you as like the responsible person. I'm not ready for the silly adult that you've turned into.
Mhm. I do hear that because there is a little bit of pushback with my siblings, especially politically, because I'm very much more a liberal person. And I think what really shaped that was I went to an all-girls school in middle school. I went to like 14 different schools growing up, but
Oh my
middle
gosh.
school, yeah, every semester was a new school, and that was like an area of control for my mother. Because as soon as I started to like, we never moved homes. As soon as I started to settle in the school, she would find something wrong with it or with my education or something like that. Or she said I was getting too bullied, which every kid gets bullied in one way or another. That's just
Mhm.
life. And she would just pick me and my siblings up and move us to a new school. But the longest time I was at one school was Irma, which was an all-girls school, and it was a leadership academy. And it was the first time that I ever got to see that, oh, wait, women can actually do things because I was raised in a conservative Christian household in the deep South in Texas. So that was like the first time I like my brain was like open to like new possibilities. And that kind of cascaded into me being more consciously aware of all the weird different dynamics that went on in my household. And I want to know, when was the first time that you started to question the way that you were raised or the cycles that you were a part of?
I love your story because so much of it mirrors mine. When I went to college, that was when I sort of had like all these conservative beliefs that I had been raised with that I didn't question. They really got turned on their head. It's funny, my username, a lot of people are like, oh, it's liberal Jane because of my politics or whatever, or my name is Jane. When I was growing up, my dad would have all these names for people, Debbie Downer, Joe Schmo. And so when I went to college and I started talking about these liberal beliefs, I would debate with my dad, and that was like what he would call me to dismiss me. He'd be like, all right, liberal Jane. I honestly didn't pack the majority of this while it was happening. I I think when you grow up in that environment, I mean, it's just so normalized. I put a lot of blame on myself. I felt like I was inherently broken, that there was something wrong with me and that I had to change. And so like I said, I went to college, and that's when I think the first cracks started to sort of show. And I knew that when I graduated, I did not want to go back home. So I ended up moving with my boyfriend at the time to Virginia, which when we start talking about cycles of abuse, I was leaving one situation that was bad for a situation that I can look at that decision now and say maybe that wasn't the smartest thing for a 21-year-old who didn't have any savings or any like support really to do. And so once I moved to Virginia, that was when I started, I think, leveling out a little bit and realizing. I got pretty sick after I moved here. And being sick wasn't abnormal for me. And a lot of people who have done, work on their trauma, they may be familiar with ACEs. It's Adverse Childhood Experiences. And it's this quiz that you can take. And the higher your score, the more susceptible you may be to things like chronic illnesses, substance abuse, and other mental health outcomes. And so my chronic illness, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease when I was 21. I didn't have a family history of it. And I can look back now and see that it was the result of like some intense yo-yo dieting, because that's how I sought control at the time, and stress, how that combined into a lifelong condition. And I think that's when I was like, okay, I need to start taking my health seriously. And then by the time I was 25, I think I just felt really stuck and confused because on the surface, I had everything that I should have wanted. I had the apartment, I had a boyfriend, I had freedom and pets, and I just lived in this state of constantly being overwhelmed, stressed, and anxious. And that's when I started therapy, which definitely helped. But I can look back and there are so many times where it's like, oh, like even in this last year, it's like, oh, I literally think that way because of the things I was taught as a child, not because they are actually that way.
That's really an interesting perspective to have. I think of this because of the way that it was embedded into me, ingrained in me as a child, not because I naturally just had this idea or I learned this idea later on in life when you can conceptualize, because I really resonate that with that as well. I found your page a while ago and I love your art. It is beautiful. It is so empowering. I think I've shared it on like both my personal and the podcast several times before I even reached out because I loved it so much. And it really, I mean, I also use art to transmute a lot of my pain into purpose. And it seems like you've been doing that as well with your own art. As a child, were you also super artistic? Was that repressed, or did that always just come naturally?
I was a pretty creative kid. I am very lucky. My mom worked uh, in a children's library. And so a lot of that, I mean, she inspired me so much. She would go all out for the holidays, even when we didn't have much. Like she always worked so hard to create whimsy and fun in a childhood where there really wasn't a lot. Um, Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. What was the
It's
question?
okay. I understand because it brings back like different memories of,
Mhm.
what your mom did to kind of create a better circumstance for you. And I loved libraries as well growing up. Libraries were the best. There was a program, I don't know if it still exists, but it was Readers Are Leaders. And if you read a book and you actually read a book, you would get like a little stamp on this sheet and you could win like a ticket to the circus or a
Ooh,
computer. One time I won like a computer as a little kid because I read so much. And being able to transport yourself into a book can also be a form of coping.
absolutely. Definitely an escape from reality. In terms of creativity, I resisted art for a really long time. I refused to take it in high school until my senior year. I took an art class, and then I was like, oh, why have I been resisting it? I was always taught that, art isn't a career. It's not something that like you can pursue, that I should really be looking at things like being a nurse or a lawyer or these things that I didn't really have any interest in. And so even when I went to college, I entered undeclared. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And then um, I ended up I took a media studies class, and that was like, whoa, I love this. And I switched my major to something called new media. And so that was stuff like photography, videography. It was really like teaching yourself how to do things, which I really liked. And that's when I started digital illustration just casually. I would make like these little like jittery gifs, made all these like we would do programming, so I made like little flash games, like stuff like that. And I think that's when the creativity really started to blossom because I was living on my own and I could really do whatever I wanted.
That's really sweet. I'm glad that you have made that for yourself and were able to embrace it. See, I kind of had the opposite. I'm extremely artistic in almost every single way. And from the age of 3, I've been a professional singer, voice actor, actor. I did like plays since I was a child. And my parents kind of saw, my talents and gifts and pushed me to the extreme. They were like, okay, you're
Mm.
gifted, therefore you're going to make a career out of this and you're going to be very focused. And my mom, it was just another way for her to control because her shtick the whole time was like, all I ever wanted to be was a singer whenever I was little, and my mom never
Wow.
let me. So you're gonna do everything and take every opportunity that comes your way, and you're gonna do it with a happy heart and do your best because Jesus is watching you and you want to glorify the Lord, right? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. And my dad would say things like, I don't care how well other kids do as long as you're better than them. And so that was like something that was really ingrained on me as a child is like overly competitive with art and learning everything that I could and, sucking everything up. My parents would tell me things like, teachers are just failed artists. Teachers in any way, sort, like as an art teacher, that's a failed artist. Guess what I do now? I teach music.
Oh my gosh.
As the one of the biggest like fuck yous to my mom. Really, I teach music. I teach people how to sing. I use all of the classical training that I had growing up as well as like everything from my studies on voice and the anatomy of voice and I teach people how to sing. And it was really a way of like, I don't want to perform anymore. I don't want to be someone's puppet. I don't want to be on stage anymore. I would love to still be a part of art and still, you know, embrace the talents that I have that I've fought for, that I've cultivated over 20 plus years, but do it as a way to help other people heal. And that has been like transformative for me and also my mental like disposition of you know when I was a kid like performing on stage could be really traumatic. If I made like one mistake, I was so super down on myself. I would hate myself. I would hit myself. I'd punch myself.
Mm.
I'd harm myself because I made a mistake or I fumbled over a line or something like that. And now, as an adult, I look at past that little girl and like want to hold her and pick her up and be like, it's gonna be okay. You're allowed to make mistakes. It's not the end of the world. Do you ever think back on a memory from your childhood or like a generational pattern of dysfunction you're trying so actively to change that to prevent it from further occurring?
Yeah, while you were talking, and I appreciate your openness so much, it just really makes you think about how having a narcissistic parent, it really takes away your autonomy. And when you're so young, you don't even realize that that's what's happening, that someone else's dreams and values are being projected onto you. I think as an adult, like so much of the work that I've done mental health wise has been clarifying my values and like I didn't realize how many of the decisions I was making that were based on what I thought I should do, not what I actually wanted to do or what my desires were, but what I thought would optically look the best. And of course, with narcissists, that's all they care about is the perception of them, and then that extends to their children. It's hard to answer because it's been such a robust journey, and I think especially with childhood, like when you talk about CPTSD, like there are people who've experienced a lot of trauma in their adult life that there's almost like a normal period to look back to. And when you have the type of childhoods that we've had, it's like, where is the baseline? You have to sort of recreate that for yourself, and that's really friggin' hard.
It is incredibly difficult and I really agree with you on so many levels like that because, you know, I was molded by a lot of control and chaos because my mother refused to do any cleaning and she was a
Mm,
hoarder. And so we grew up in like a controlled chaos. And what I mean by that is she would place the blame on me and my younger brothers on the house not being clean, even though we were children and had no concept of what is clean, because it
hmm
was never clean. We had no concept of what does clean mean. And so from a young age, like if there was, anything like dirty, we were blamed and we were yelled at and we were sent to like go stay at my Mimi and Papa's house. And then we recognized, okay, well, what is clean even here? Because if we even have toys on the floor, our Mimi's gonna throw them away because she says we don't want them, even though we're children and children have toys on the ground. That's just a natural thing about kids. We weren't really taught to put our toys away because we value them. We were taught to put our toys away because if we didn't, they would get thrown away and we wouldn't have them anymore. And then growing up, like I was constantly forced to like take care of not only myself, but also my siblings and my parents, do all the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, because if I didn't do it, it didn't get done. And then I would get yelled at, screamed at, cursed at, like belittled for an extreme amount of time. And I thought that was normal because I had no reference for anything else because I wasn't allowed to have sleepovers, wasn't allowed to go over to friends' houses. I never really was able to make friends because every semester I was moved to a different school. And my parents would say things, oh, it's because you're gifted. Oh, because you're talented. You're more talented than all the other kids that you're surrounding yourself with. We want you to build yourself up. We don't want you to be surrounded by people that'll bring you down. We don't want you to be like those people. We want you to be set apart in that Christian mentality of like that better than like we are God's chosen, whatever, even though I don't subscribe to that now. And as a child, it's like so much chaos because you long for connection as a kid. You want to have friends. You want to be around people that you can learn from. And I was never allowed to learn from children. I was only allowed to learn from the approved adults, which were my parents and my uncles and my aunts and my grandparents. And then when I went off to college and I started to see other people like live in the way that they were able to just be themselves. And I could finally start coming out of my shell and not be so hyper fixated on winning, but actually connecting and creating together and making a beautiful work together. I had a panic attack because I didn't want to go back home. Didn't want to go back home to
mm,
my mother who was abusing me. And I recognized, oh my gosh, this is abuse. Then COVID happened, subjugated to abuse again and again and again. My dad was hit by a car, subjugated to even more abuse by my mother. And then my grandpa died, my dad died, and my other grandpa died. And I became homeless. And I, like you said, I still have no framework of what normalcy really is or what a good childhood really is because I didn't have it. And I have like no way to, have that framework of what is like, am I doing good now? Because you don't know.
yeah. So much of what you talked about, I resonated with in terms of the control and sort of expecting a narcissist expects their child to know already how to do things. Like they're not going to teach you. It's like, why don't you know how to do this? You're stupid, you're useless. And it's such a difficult way to live. And I think in particular when you have a dysfunctional family dynamic that is going on for so long, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever it is, when one person disrupts that, it is extremely normal for everyone else in the unit to get angry, to isolate that person, to hurt that person. And it is so hard to be that person because it's like, if I stay, I am spiritually, emotionally dying. And if I leave, there's no support. This past year for me, has honestly been the hardest of my life. And I really, it had to happen, but at the same time, it was probably the most alone I've ever felt in my life. Like, oh, there's nobody coming to save me. And there were hard decisions that I had to make. Like, in the fall, I was like, okay, you can't eat free meals anymore. You can't afford it. Like, this isn't a decision that I want to make, but like, what do you do? And it's hard because when you are that isolated person, you feel so alone and you're being punished for something that really isn't your fault. It's just because the other people in your life are unable to hold the person who is in power accountable and actually disrupt that. And so if they can't do that, they can't accept the reality of the situation.
Did anyone in your family try to break the cycle before you? Do you know? Or were you the first to even acknowledge it?
I was the first to acknowledge it. I think because I'm the oldest, I it's funny when I left my ex last June, I over this past year I've heard a lot of why didn't you say anything was wrong? Why like we didn't think that anything was going on but between you two. Like we didn't see it. And it made me so angry, I think, because when I was a child, like before we would go to family get-togethers or something, we'd be primed on what to say. We'd be, okay, tell them this, tell them that. Don't talk about this, don't talk about that. And I learned how to create this illusion of happy suburban family, despite the fact that we weren't showering, we didn't always have food. Like, there was so much pressure to appear normal, and I didn't realize that I did that into adulthood.
Yeah, it's I can really resonate with that as well because when I was in college, I got into abusive relationship after abusive relationship after abusive relationship because it was all I knew. I'm married now. I got married 2 months ago. My husband is
Oh,
amazing. He's the best. Thank you.
congratulations.
He's the best person that I have ever had the privilege of meeting, and he met me when I was deep in the trauma, like entrenched in like the thick of
Wow.
it. And he really embraced me and lifted me up. And we went on a road trip this past weekend because it was my birthday weekend and his great grandparents wanted to see him. And this was the only weekend I had off because I took off it's for my birthday. And in the car, I was talking to him about my past relationships and, the trauma that I've experienced. And he told me, he was like, well, that's because it's all you've ever known. How can you be expected to make a wise decision for yourself when all the decisions that, you have been shown were horrible, were like self-betraying, and
Mhm.
never like reinforce like a healthy, communication, healthy boundaries because your boundaries were constantly crossed from the moment you were born. Like you didn't have autonomy. How are you expected to, make wise decisions for yourself in past relationships when your boundaries are crossed? Because I was telling him, I was like, man, I've been cheated on in every relationship before you.
Oh
And
my
it's
God,
like,
yeah.
that's how I don't see how that's your fault because you know, whenever your mom would betray your confidence or anything like that, whenever you tell a secret to your mom and she would tell somebody else and they'd make fun of you for even talking about it, like you're just repeating a pattern. You're just repeating a cycle that has been set before you for a long time. And it was kind of like a aha like moment of, oh, yeah, that sucks. Like, dang, like, where did you come from? How did I make such a good decision with you? And he's like, I don't know how did I make such a good decision with you because he was also raised in chaos and trauma. And it was very like eye-opening because, we visited his great-grandparents who he hasn't seen since I think he was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And they're in their 90s. And when his mom divorced from his dad, like they stopped talking to him completely. Like he didn't exist anymore. And he's like,
Mm.
yeah, they're really, really old. They're in their 90s, and I feel bad. And this may be the last time I ever see them. But for my own conscience, to reaffirm to myself, I would not make decisions like that if I was in their shoes. I would do everything in my power to reach out to that young kid because it really impacted me. It made me feel worthless. It made me feel like I was a prop, that I was a tool, that I was just a toy that they didn't want anymore. And now that I got to see them and actually see, from their perspective that they do actually love me, I don't agree with their decisions, but it makes me feel a lot better about mine to even go see them. And he's like, I'm doing this as a way to, reaffirm to myself that we want to start a family. He's like, I'm going to be a good dad. I do make good decisions, and they are, for not just my better, but the better of everybody around me. I want to bring that home to you and the decisions that you've made to stop, that relationship that was obviously hurtful to you and put yourself first. That's setting a really good boundary. How does that boundary of also, you know, setting that boundary with your family, are you no contact with some of them? Like, I want to understand that story because I haven't heard enough. And I'm sorry if that's crossing a boundary. I want to respect your story. I want to hear more.
I appreciate how respectful you are. Honestly, a lot of what brings me to activism is this belief that we really suffer in isolation and silence. And I think stigma is such a powerful force for people. It prevents people from having full autonomy, being able to make those decisions. And when I ended up, when I was about 25, 26, I started to see the cracks that things weren't right. I had been in therapy for about a year. I saw that I was making changes and it just still wasn't really panning out. Um, Once the pandemic hit and my partner was home all the time, he started to see that like my dad would call me. My dad is the narcissistic parent. My dad would call me twice a day and talk to me for 45 minutes to an hour. And when I would get off those phone calls, I'd be silent. I would be very quiet. I would shut down. And I didn't even see that was happening. Seeing it through his eyes really woke me up to it. In 2020, the protests around the unjust murder of George Floyd were happening. And like I mentioned, my dad is very conservative, very racist, and we were having all these fights about it. And things were already pretty rocky. And Father's Day came around. I had gotten him a gift, and I kept calling and calling, and he wouldn't answer. And I just knew something was wrong. And I thought maybe there was something going on at home. I didn't think it had anything to do with me. The day after Father's Day, I received a phone call, and my dad said, I saw something interesting online. Um, get off the phone, I'll text it to you, and I'll call you back. And what I got was a screenshot from my Tumblr, and it was someone who had asked the question, are you a part of the LGBTQ community, or are you just an ally? Because I'd never been direct about it. I just sort of skirted the issue. Um, and I responded to that question because it was on my Tumblr and I guess it felt safe. With I'm bisexual, but I will likely never be out because my parents wouldn't accept me. Um, and my dad took that screenshot and showed me exactly how he did not accept me. It was probably one of the worst phone calls in my life, worst moments in my life. And the fallout from that, I had a complete mental breakdown. I had been told growing up that if you are gay, I'll beat the gay out of you. And that was almost like a daily comment. I saw my brother got hit and hurt because he would act a little feminine and oh no. Um, and I I had never planned to come out to my parents for that reason. And so to be confronted with it, and after that, we didn't talk. I said I need space, and he kept calling me and calling me and calling me. And on the phone call, he was like, "How could you do this to me? How could you lie to everybody?" Really made me feel like I did one of the worst things in my life. And I wish I could say that, we went no contact in 2020. I wish I could say, then I spread my wings and I was happy. Like, no, I, for like 3 or 4 years, had severe depression. I could not leave the house without having panic attacks. I was paranoid. I was so convinced my dad was going to drive down from New York and kick my ass. Like before I would go to bed, I'd make my partner check the apartment to make sure no one was like hiding. And it really scared me. And none of my immediate family reached out. No, I don't know what they knew, if they knew. They just knew me and my dad weren't talking. And then the following Christmas, I was told to come and I didn't because I was afraid I was going to get my ass kicked. Um, and there had already been a physical escalation the last time I had been there before the outing. So I was like, I definitely I don't want to do that. Um, But instead of trying to understand my perspective, my mom and siblings ended up getting in a big fight with me, and we ended up not talking for about 6 months. And that was insanely hurtful, because I was, it was, how could you do this to mom? No one was really understanding my perspective. And even now in 2025, the only time I see my mom and siblings is when I visit my grandparents in Florida. So that's like once or twice a year. And this past trip, you know, over the years, I've tried to have conversations about this, about what happened, because it really was not my dad's place to out me like that. And it had huge consequences for me in my life, completely changed the trajectory of my life, ultimately for the positive, but it was horrible. And I recently, last month, confronted my mom about it. And she said something like, I know you and dad don't talk. And finally, I don't know what it was. I just went, okay, tell me the reason me and my dad don't talk. And she gave me such a dumb excuse that was not rooted in reality at all. And I hate that it took me 5 years to have the strength to say what actually happened. Um, but in the same breath, the way she reacted, her reaction was, well, that's stupid. That's really stupid. Not, I'm so sorry that you had to go through all that counseling. I'm so sorry you had to get on mental health medications. I'm so sorry that you felt alone and that nobody was there for you. There was none of that. It was just, that's stupid. Um, and so I think everything happens for a reason. I had to have the strength of getting a not so great response to be able to ask the question. I think I knew that. But setting boundaries has been really difficult. Even, I mean, you know what it's like to piss off a narcissist. Like, I haven't spoken to my dad in 5 years. The only thing I've ever asked from him is an apology, and that is also a price too high to pay for him. I still get texts now. I got a text last January that, it's been 5 years, so you can laugh, but I got a text that was like, I can't wait to die so I can haunt you as a ghost and destroy your life. And like, I just took it and I sent the screenshot to my friends and I was like, can't wait for my dad to haunt me in the afterlife. Like, it's just it's nonsensical, and that's really why it's so important to be clear on your values before going into this healing and work and really interacting with people. Because if you're not clear on yourself, you're gonna get gaslit.
Yeah. So you had to burn that bridge essentially. And a lot of people, especially people raised in, controlling environments, will be told that burning bridges, cutting connection, like healing is always possible, forgiveness is always possible. That's not true.
Mhm.
because forgiveness and healing, it takes, more than one person. It takes whoever is involved to recognize that something is wrong, to take accountability of their part in whatever happened, and then to make changes, considerable changes most of the time, to rectify the situation, to prevent it from further occurring, and to be a better person in general. And narcissists, the first step is recognizing there's a problem. They're not going to get to that step
Yeah.
ever, 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 ever. And like that's a big thing with me and my mother. My mother will never ever recognize that she has hurt me ever. And I've tried as well as you. I've tried very hard, pleaded with her, cried at her like, you I've never said you've ruined my life. I've always said you've hurt me. And she's like, "Well, I'm sorry for ruining your life, but I did the best I could."
Hmm.
Like, I never said you ruined my life because my life is obviously not ruined. Genuinely, I'm in the healthiest place I have ever been in my life. My life is not ruined, but I can't have her in my life. And that's another big thing as well, is a lot of people in my family, which I'm not connected with my mom's side of the family at all, but with my dad's side of the family, we are all very close. They don't agree with me on almost everything that I stand for, but like genuinely, that's okay because I know that they love me and I love them too. And if we're going to have a disagreement, I know it's going to be civil. It's never going to be an attack of my character, which is another huge thing. Like, I know a lot of people who are on the opposite side of the spectrum that'll say, you can't be friends with someone who supports Trump. You can't, like, be in, like, I'm gonna unblock you if I see that you're like supporting something that I don't support or whatever. And I don't necessarily agree with that either, because you're essentially leaving those people in like a vacuum of their own thoughts that may or may not be really horrible. And if they don't ever see a different perspective on life, how are they going to change their point of views? Genuinely, how? They can't. It's impossible. They're just in this bubble. And so that's like another thing of controlling systems is like, oh, this person needs to be held accountable for their actions. That's another big part of cancel culture. They can never like have a space to talk. They can never heal. They can never, be a better person because they did this wrong thing that I strongly disagree with. That's another part of burning bridges that I don't necessarily agree with. But in this context, where there is no ability to rectify a situation and it's harmful to you, burning bridges is the only course. It's the only
Mhm.
action that will protect yourself, not only your physical self because you were afraid of getting attacked, but also your mental well-being, your physical well-being, because everything up here impacts everything down here. That's why a lot of people develop chronic illnesses because they're so stressed, and stress deteriorates your body in a myriad of ways. For me, and I've told this to my cousins, I'm never going to reconnect with my mother. And they're like,
Mhm.
well, she's your mom. Like, yeah, she is my mom. And this was an incredibly hard decision for me to make, but it's the right one because she's never going to see me for me. She's never going to see me as an individual. I will always be an appendage to her. I will always be part of her. I'm not me. I am an aspect of her. Whether she likes that aspect or doesn't like that aspect flips on the head of a coin. Like I will never know. It is an up down roller coaster with her and I can't put myself through that anymore. It's
Yep.
deteriorating not only my mental health but my physical well-being that I started having seizures.
Oh
Like
my
I
gosh.
can't do it anymore. And I've told that to my cousins, and I just had my wedding, as I said, and I did not invite her. She was not allowed. And my cousin's like, well, don't you miss your mom? Like, no, because I know she would make this whole day about her. I haven't talked to her in years. if I invited her to my wedding, she would show up in like a big dress and she would talk to everyone and act like
Mm,
everything is fine, that like this is her
mm-hmm.
daughter and oh, look how well I've raised her. Look how beautiful she is. She gets all her beauty from me. She's so talented because I pushed her so hard. It would not be about me and my husband. It would be about her. And then all of you would look at me and be like, why would you bring this abuser? You call her an abuser. She seems like such a lovely person.
Yep.
There's nothing I can do right or wrong in this situation, but I'm going to do what's right for me and my future family, and that is to distance myself from this person as much as humanly possible and not reconnect with her because I've tried and there's no reciprocation, there's no accountability. There's only justification on her end for each and every single thing that she does. She has never once said, "I'm sorry" to me in my entire life. Never once have I heard her say that, but I have said that to her a billion times for
Mm,
things I shouldn't be sorry for. And I'm not going to be sorry for living my life. I remember when I came out as bisexual in college and started using they, them pronouns, and she screenshotted it like in my Instagram bio. I wasn't even following her. I thought I had her
oh my
blocked.
gosh.
And she was like, "What is this?"
Yep.
Screenshotted it, sent it to me, and I was like, block. Like not gonna talk about that because I don't need to explain myself to her. You know
Oh.
what I mean?
I always say, my dad had the first 25 years of my life, and that's how he chose to spend it with me. He stole from me, he put me down, this, that, and the other. Why would I continue that? And, think like what you were saying about having a family, especially when you have a partner and stuff, it's like, am I also subjecting them to this? Like, do I want my children to feel the way that I did as a child? And the answer to that's no.
Exactly. You have to set those boundaries for your future to uphold a lifestyle that you deserve to live, and that lifestyle is not going to be constantly monitored by someone and feeling like I'm always in trouble. That was another thing that happened to me recently because I guess this is like promoting witchcraft, but I practice witchcraft and I have been since I was little actually. And I talked in a previous episode, 2 episodes ago, with an anonymous guest, and she also practices witchcraft. And I was telling her about like one day you'll find your coven, you'll find your group of people, and it'll be great. And they'll be the people that
Hmm.
build you up. And I have that group of people, that amazing group of girls that I love so much. Like genuinely, they are part of me now. And I don't know who essentially tattletale to my Mimi, who's like the matriarch of our family. And my Mimi is like, I hear that you're promoting witchcraft on your podcast. I'm like, Mimi, who told you that? And she's like, I like, Grace, don't let the devil take a toehold. Don't let the devil take a toehold. And I'm like, getting those residual feelings of panic, of, oh no, I'm in trouble from being like a little kid
Hmm.
ingrained in that Mimi is going to be disappointed in me. And I had to stop after that conversation was over because I love my Mimi so much and I don't agree with her on a lot of things. I don't agree with my family on a lot of things. I had to just stop and repeat to myself, I am not in trouble. I did nothing wrong. I am not in trouble. I did nothing wrong. I am safe. I am okay. I'm not in trouble. I had to keep doing that to myself over and over and let myself feel okay and reaffirm to myself that I am safe. Nothing is going to be taken away from me because that was like a big thing. My entire life was like resource guarding from my mom or taking things away from me just because she could. Nothing is going to be taken away from me. I'm not going to lose my friends. I have my friends. I am safe. I am loved. I'm not in trouble. That was and I was like, oh my gosh, so impressed with myself. I was like, wait, I helped soothe that inner scared me of like, I could have spiraled and been like, oh no, my family hates me, whatever. I'm not in trouble. I'm okay. And I recognize for myself that is such a huge thing of me not spiraling, of me taking accountability for my own feelings and me preventing anything further destructive towards my life that I've worked so hard to build to create this safety for myself. Have you ever had like a moment like that where you're like, oh my gosh, I did what my therapist taught me how to do. I actually put it into practice.
Absolutely. I mean, I probably like you, I grew up in a setting where not enemies, emotions were to be avoided at all costs. Emotions were the enemy. And in particular, having depression and anxiety as a kid, I would hear all the time, smile more, or like, why can't you be happy? And like, it became that emotions were a performance. It's like, okay, how can I perform okay? How can I appear okay? And in doing that, there's so much self-abandonment, and you become really out of touch with your emotions. And then add the layers of, I mentioned I had an eating disorder. So it's like ignoring my body cues, ignoring my emotions. Like I was I was alive, but I wasn't in my body. And my body really was the enemy. Everything that was happening, I took out on myself. Um, and I just wasn't engaged at all. And this past 5 years or so, it's really been looking at emotions as a compass. Like, I'm doing something and feelings start to spike up. That doesn't mean keep pushing through. Especially if you have trauma that you're working through, letting it come up and letting yourself feel it is so freaking uncomfortable, but it's what you have to do, especially, I'm somebody with CPTSD, so I have flashbacks. I have like there are intensities to my emotions that are really uncomfortable to feel. And it's really hard not to just like lean into substance abuse or distract yourself. And those things, maybe not substance abuse, those things have a place, but that should not be your default. And so understanding your emotions, trusting your emotions, I think is a big part of it, but also realizing not all your thoughts need to be chased, especially if you've grown up in an environment where it's dysfunctional. It is more than likely that you are having distorted thinking. And there's stuff online about different thought distortions, like all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking, catastrophizing, like always thinking the worst is going to happen or waiting for the other shoe to drop, and being able to understand those things and then start to see, okay, I am bringing a negative perspective to this, and really trying to get to this place of neutrality of what do I need in this moment and how can I take care of myself. Sometimes that's sitting outside for 5 minutes and just breathing in some fresh air. Other times it's more intense. But I think tuning into myself has been a huge shift over this period of time.
I I'm really proud of you because that takes a lot, you know. We've had to reschedule this episode because of some things that have happened with you. And from my perspective, it makes me feel like, okay, I had to like reframe like, okay, this person needs to take time for themselves to recoup. There will be an episode. Because in my brain, I have catastrophized since I was a little kid because my mom would like scream at me like this is like all your fault, whatever. And so
Mm.
that's like an ingrained thought process. And I had to sit down and be like, she wants to reschedule. She's not canceling an episode. It's gonna be okay. You will make another episode with like I'm so grateful for our Discord members because we made like a whole nother episode. And that day was also a really crazy day for me as well. And it was good that I took that space as well. It's like I think everything happens for a reason because that day was the 5 year anniversary of my dad's accident because he was hit by a car 3 days before my birthday on June 19th, 2020. And it's also Juneteenth. So I'm also part black. So that was like it was like a lot of, you know, hard things happening on that day to reckon with. And I had to take time and I had to just create and make a podcast and make jewelry while I made the episode. If you guys want to check it out, please do. But it was a really healing moment, and I am honestly glad that you canceled because I took time for myself. It's okay. I'm glad because I took time for myself and I was able to, reassess, reevaluate, and, you know, put myself first because that is one of the hardest things for me. For real. That is like the hardest thing. You get it as the oldest, daughter, parentified mother of the family. Like it's hard to put your own needs first.
Hmm.
It's so hard. So I am glad. And this is no tea, no shade, because this is all like genuine, like I am glad because that was a very hard day for me. And I did need to cry. And I was like, wait, am I feeling upset because she canceled, or is this all a bunch of upset feelings that I'm already having from this day to begin with? And now it's all
Mm-hmm.
getting conflated together. And I was like, yeah. It is all getting conflated. Let me just sit and cry about my dad being gone and not being able to connect with him on a very important day. And that was good. It was good. I needed to cry. I needed to make some things. And then my husband came home and I just needed to be held. And I needed like no big things going on for that day. And it was good.
Hmm. It's so tough. It's funny that you bring this up because at the same time that this is happening, I was like, I don't want to have to reschedule. I don't want to have to reschedule. And all of this, like, frankly, my ex saying you're such a flake, you can't do anything, you always cancel, you always follow through. And anyone who has chronic illness, I think this will resonate because it's like you so badly want to do something and then your body is just not letting you. And it is such a frustrating experience. But I'm glad it taught something to both of us, and I'm glad that we get to be here now.
Hell yeah. It's all about growth. It is so much. It's so important to recognize whenever you're struggling and allow yourself to feel that struggle and not suppress it. That was like a really big thing for me as well because I also have chronic illness and I am like a pusher through. I gotta push
Hmm.
through every single time. And recently, two friends had a birthday party on the same day, and I was trying to like make both birthday parties, which is honestly very much an impossible task in itself. And I had to mark it because I make jewelry. I call them gracelets. I had to mark it the day prior and also the day of, and I was like, hey. I'm gonna do this. I was already exhausted from the day prior that night. It was an exhausting night because you got to set everything up yourself and take down everything yourself, be your own salesperson. I also made all of the things. It's just it's an event unto itself. And that morning I'd set everything up and I was telling my friend Summer, who she hosts all the markets, I was like, I'm not feeling well. And she's like, well, sit down, like take a minute. And I'm like, I am not feeling well. I am not feeling well. I'm gonna have a seizure. I am too stressed out. I am not feeling
Mm.
well. And I had to call my husband, which thankfully he was on the way back from like a little trip with his friends and he came to get me and I had to leave that market early. And I came home and I was just sobbing because I was like, I'm not going to be able to see my friends. I'm such a disappointment. I made them all these birthday presents and I'm not going to be able to celebrate them. Like, birthdays are so important. And my husband had to be like, stop, stop. You,
Yeah.
you are going to give yourself another seizure. Chill out. Like, stop. He like bear hugged me. He's like, you are okay. You are not a bad person. You are having a human moment. You are not Wonder Woman. You can't be in two places at once. Just take time, sleep. I slept for a really long time. And I woke up and I apologized to my friends, and they were like, oh no, it's no big deal. We had both of them had lots of people over there that I wasn't even missed. I was like, all right, that's good. I'm glad because I hate being let down by other people, and like one of my biggest fears is to let down others. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Something I try to tell myself that is helpful, and I try to do it when people cancel on me too. It's like when someone's like, I just need some time to take care of myself. It's like responding with, I'm so proud of you for doing that. Like, I'm glad that you made that call for yourself. And knowing that like your friends, your chosen family, they love you, they want the best for you. They don't want you there if you're feeling like you're about to fall apart. And it's hard to feel like that in the moment, especially because it's like, no, I have to be there. I have to show up. I have to act a certain way. And there's so much pressure internally.
There is lots of pressure, but that's okay. Like, we'll get through it. We'll get through it. You just have to be nice to yourself. I have to tell myself all the time, you gotta be nice to yourself. You can't be nicer to everybody else and not be nice to yourself. That's
Are
very,
you extending the grace that you give to others to yourself?
very true. That's very true. And it's also my name, so it's like I should know this. Should be reminded every time I see my name. How has your past experiences shaped the way that you're approaching relationships now, whether they're romantic, platonic, or even familial?
Oh, that's a great question. I now know I'm very prone to narcissists. And that I think for a while created a lot of distrust in me. So I've been single since the summer last year. And I was like, you know what? I need to take a year to be single. I lose myself too much in relationships. I'm very self-abandoning. Um, and that is how I'm sort of contributing to this cycle. And like, I'm finding partners who love how much I give, and I'm not getting anything in return. So this past year, I think I've really, really focused on friendships and like above all, I'm like seeing people and hanging out with people who love me, who aren't expecting anything from me. That's the most important thing. And it's silly, but like I'll be like working on something, as an artist, I kind of work whenever. Sometimes it's late at night, sometimes it's in the morning or during the day, whatever. Um, and it's like someone asks me, I'm gonna go take a drive and pick up food. Do you want to come? And it's like, yes, of course. Like always prioritize human contact. That's like my MO. And I think recently I told myself a year, and so I'm coming up on that year, and I just had such bad anxiety and stress because I felt myself craving companionship and partnership, but I was so afraid that it was only like my last relationship. And when I broke up with my ex and I was living on my own for the first time in my life, I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, I have to make him breakfast. Okay, what does he want to do today? What's the MO going to be? What do I have to whatever? And I woke up and it was a real shift the first couple months being like, actually, no one wants anything from you. Like it's just you. And that was really sad for a while. The winter was definitely hard, but I think all of that was necessary to sort of end the cycle of abuse that I found myself caught up in and really learn how to self-validate, how to feel confident on my own, how to enjoy my own time. And dating again, it's been I mean, there's a lot of people out there and they're not all healed as we both know. Um, but that has been really powerful. And I've heard therapists say that healthy relationships are a great way to heal relationship trauma because you're with somebody who affirms that. But also, I think having that own sense of worth is really important before you dive into the friends process.
I couldn't agree more on that sentiment. And I've been in, this relationship with my now husband for the past 4 years. And it wasn't until this past year where, for me, kind of the reverse happened of like, I told him, I'm going to make a lot of friends. And he was like, oh, yeah? Like, yeah. Because I've never had a friend group ever.
Mhm.
I've never had multiple friends at once. And I was always the giver in all of my friends. It was, me paying for stuff, me constantly
Yeah.
inviting them to places, me doing everything for my friends, me planning everything. And he's like, okay, well, I want you to be very intentional that you're looking for friends that are going to reciprocate as much as you put into your friendships. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, bet. And so I went to art supply stores and craft stores because I was like, I'm gonna find people who are like-minded with me and also share my hobbies. And I made a bunch of acquaintances and I was like, okay, I'm gonna invite all of them to my Halloween party. And I did. And they all meshed so well together. And I was like, I'm gonna start hosting parties. And I did, and I built my coven out of those girls that I essentially manifested into my life. I found them from different areas. I'm like, we are all going to be friendship together. And they became friends with each other. And I was so excited because I was like, yes, I am not the glue. I am not the glue. Let's go. They all love each other. They all are like in each other's lives as well. And we all care about each other. And yes, we've had some hiccups, some bump in the roads, but we're all the better for it. And I'm so grateful and I'm so happy to finally have a group of women who actively care about each other and care about me. And I'm not putting in all the work. And it's
Mm.
awesome. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Like I can text them whenever we want. We have like a group chat where we talk all the time. And I'm making another really good friend. Her name is Summer. Shout out Summer. I know you're watching Beach. Like we've been spending a lot of time together and it's also really good because I haven't had like a close like one-on-one friendship in so long either. And it's great because I'm slowly introducing her into the friend group and she likes all of my friends and there's no competition. There's no cattiness. It's
Mm.
just wholesome and it's amazing. And it was well fought for. And I'm so incredibly proud of myself. And little me is so excited because my birthday party is this Sunday, the Sunday that this episode is airing. So it's my birthday party on the Sunday. And my maid of honor, Alexa, her birthday is a day apart from me. So we're having a joint birthday party and it's gonna be a sleepover. And we're gonna watch all the old Barbie movies and it's gonna be great. And I'm so excited because this is healing that inner little Grace who always wanted like friends. And little Grace, that was the one thing my mom did well was planning my birthday parties. But she would invite a bunch of people who I did not know, hoping that I would make friends, like all the kids in the neighborhood or all the kids at Sunday school, what have you, all the kids that were in my current class of school that I was in. But it's consistent, intentional communication, consistent, intentional, like cohabitation, like you're in the same space with each other, not just on the phone, you're together sharing the same air. It's consistent emotional investment in each other, not enmeshment, but investment. Like, I want to
Hmm.
see you succeed. I want to see you grow. I'm going to hold you accountable for that goal that you have, even if you don't want to do that thing. I'm going to hold you accountable and you're going to do it. And maybe you may hate me for a little bit, but you'll appreciate me later. Like, it's so great. And it's the found family that I always wanted and now I have. And I'm so proud of all the people that are in my life because they're actively healing as well. It's not just me who's on a healing journey. All of them are too. All of them have been hurt and burned in one way or another, but they're actively bettering themselves. And it's so encouraging. It's so encouraging to be surrounded by people who not only comprehend your struggle, but also have had a struggle as well and are doing everything in their power to get better. And that's the whole purpose of my podcast is, you know, trauma is so isolating. It's so
Hmm.
debilitating. But if we see that other people are healing and are making active, healthy choices for themselves and for their community, we can have hope and be that spark to light up and help others as well. That's what I really want for this podcast, is so that other people who feel alone can see that two people having this conversation right now have also struggled immensely, but are doing better. And I want to bring this back into your healing, like, and how much you have worked to become the person that you are today. Um, what are some boundaries that you are so proud of that you're currently enforcing right now?
Mm. I think being very aware of the relationship trauma I bring to friendships, romantic relationships, family. I definitely have some anxious and also some avoidant attachment. Um, I think also I was in a codependent relationship with my mom growing up where like I was her confidant for like all the abuse my dad was committing. And it's really hard not to conflate codependence with love. And especially when you've only ever had codependent relationships, it's like, it's hard. What I would notice a lot, especially in this past year, is I'd be like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Are you okay? Are you all right? Like, am I doing everything? Or are you gonna like explode? And it's like, whoa, take a breath. You have to trust that there's something wrong. The person is going to tell you, like, it's not going to be this gotcha moment. It's not going to be used against you. Um, and I think with any relationship, it's really important, especially in the beginning, to take time to see how you feel. Like I'm starting to date again, and it's hard not to get caught up in that new relationship energy and just want to be with that person all the time. But you have to take space for yourself to really consider, how do I feel when I'm alone? Is this giving me anxiety? Is this giving me whatever? Because I think it's very easy to get caught up in what should be, or what on the surface is right, because we grew up in this way, where it's like it really is about the optics.
I'm proud of you for that. For sure. Yeah, new relationship energy is something that killed one of the friendships that I had like first started cultivating at the beginning of last year. She got into a new relationship and she wanted to bring him everywhere, even to, just girl days or new things. And it she started I didn't like him, and she started getting angry at me because I didn't like him. She's like, "Well, you don't know him." And I was like, "Well, he's not good for you. Not good enough, but not good for you. I see you like changing your behaviors to match his, like you're drinking a lot and you just got on birth control, and honey, that's like that can really fuck you up in a myriad of ways." Like I was very concerned, and she would tell me like everything that was going wrong in her relationship, and I finally had to tell her, I was like, "And you're angry at me for me not liking him, and the only times that we're really connecting now is for you to vent about the ways that he's frustrating you.
Mhm.
You're not telling me any positives. How am I supposed to like him? And then you're bringing him into my space, into my home, constantly trying to like forge a connection with me and him. And then you're making us go on double dates with my husband and your now boyfriend, and you're trying to compare our relationships when I've been with my husband for 4 years and we're about to get married. This was right before we were about to get married. We're about to get married. Like, it's a very, very different dynamic and different level of commitment, and also responsibility. Like, my husband is responsible for me and I am responsible for him. Like, it is not just like a dating relationship where you
Yeah,
can
it's
do
very
whatever.
different.
It's very, very different. She didn't understand that. And I had a Valentine's Day party. It was a Galentine's Day party, and I invited her, and she was like, "Oh, can I invite my friends?" And of course, I was like, "Yeah, yeah, of course. The more the merrier." And I planned all these games for us to do. I was like, "How many friends are you bringing? Let me make sure they don't feel left out," because I had made goodie bags for everyone with these heart-shaped pink glasses, like all the different colors of pink, so everyone could like find a color that they liked. Or and I it was like a self-care workshop is what we did. And we all were gonna write Valentines to each other and journal and everything. And her friends really did not mesh well with the group, number one. They were
Mm.
super catty, super clicky immediately. Um, like monopolize the conversation. And I was doing a lot of cooking because that's just what I love to do anyway. That's the way I like to show affection is through acts of service. And I was doing a lot of cooking and they didn't like what I was cooking. And so they told me to make them something else. And so I spent most of my time in the kitchen and not actually being able to be in my party that I was hosting. And they had left early. And once I got back to the party with the rest of my friends, they were like, they kept going into your bathroom, like all three of them in your bathroom together and giggling and kikiing in your bathroom. Whereas it's a big party. And it was really weird. And so I go into my bathroom, all of my drawers are opened, my makeup bag is out. They had gone through like all of my stuff. Like my weave was out because I've naturally curly hair, so I have like curly hair extensions. Curly hair extensions are expensive. They had pulled those out and I felt very, like what is going
Violated.
on? Very violated. I was like, I guess I'll message her in the morning. And so I'd taken pictures and I go to like check, hey, you know, has she messaged me? She hasn't messaged me. So I tried to tag her and it shows that she's blocked me. And I'm like, what? And I go to my husband, I'm like, hey, this girl's blocked me. And he looks and he's like, she's blocked me too. And me and her boyfriend are supposed to go to a concert tomorrow. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I paid for the tickets. We're supposed to go to a concert tomorrow. I don't want to take him. If like the only reason why we were starting to become friends was because of this, I'm going to take my other friend who was one of his groomsmen. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. And he texts the guy who's like, hey, just to let you know, your girlfriend blocked me and my fiance, and I don't think it's appropriate for us to go to a concert together. I wish you all the best. Like, I hope whatever's happening is going to be okay, but I can't go to a concert with you, and I don't appreciate the way that your girlfriend treated Grace and treated the party and treated our home, treated our space, going through our things is unacceptable. And he left it at that. And then this man child, which I love the man child song by Sabrina Carpenter. God, um, goes in on Joey, who's my husband, and says, oh, you need to get your girl something, something, something. And Joey's like, my girl, question mark, she's my future wife, and Grace did nothing wrong in this situation. Your friend, like, were not kind or courteous to Grace in a party that she planned, and like they took advantage of her kindness, and I don't appreciate that, and we're not going to go to a concert together. And he just kept going off, and Joey's like, I'm not even going to dignify this man with a response because like it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And
Yeah.
come to find out, she's blocked all of the girls in the friend group and everything like that. And all my friends are like, we don't comprehend why she acted this way. And I find out later on that the reason why she acted this way is because just like she would complain about her boyfriend to me, she complained about me to her boyfriend. And it I was just so taken aback because he called me to my husband a serial trauma dumper. And I'm like, hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, let's make a career out of it. Because a lot of people, they use that term trauma dumping as a way to belittle, as a way to
Minimize.
minimize not only the horrible things that people have gone through, but also be like, you're burdening me by me telling, because I don't want to deal with the uncomfortable feelings of what you've gone through. I don't, I want my life to be, all good things, all positive. You're like bringing the vibe
Hmm.
down, stuff like that. And it's super isolating. It's super like victim blaming. It's horrible. And so I wanted to take that and transmute it into something else so that people could see, you know, what a healthy conversation can look like with also sharing mutually what I'm going through so we can support each other in a way that isn't detrimental, because that's true. It can be pretty detrimental to hear that your friend is going through horrible things, especially if you don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
I'm taking that, transmuting it into something that is healthy, that is safe, that is mutually beneficial, and that can be replicated for the audience, for you guys listening or watching us on YouTube. Um, it's something that can be easily put into place. So, thinking about that, thinking of all the knowledge that you have in your brain, how do you define healing? Not just conceptually, but like
Mhm.
in your daily life. What are some aspects that you're like, oh my gosh, I've healed in this way?
Oh, that is a good question. I think it's really how I feel on the inside, having a lot less anxiety, not having panic attacks anymore. I used to have panic attacks anywhere from 4 to 5 a day. It got to the point where I actually had to leave my job, which was pretty heartbreaking. Um, I think in the day to day, the difference really is my relationships, where I don't feel like my trauma is a burden or something I have to hide. Like in my past relationship, it definitely felt like, I mean, it was a really toxic dynamic by the end, but it felt like my trauma and my emotions were the enemy again. And realizing now, like you mentioned anniversaries and like anyone who has trauma, anniversaries of major trauma, it can be really triggering. And um, this past Sunday, it was Father's Day. It was also the year anniversary of me leaving my ex, and the way I left was pretty dramatic. I I at the time felt like a breakup was something that two people needed to mutually decide on. I didn't realize breaking up was a statement and not a question. Um, and I was a mess after I left that relationship. I really felt so broken, so small, so I had done so much self-abandonment that I didn't even know who I was anymore. And so I think I'm at the point where like I wake up and I have a free day. I'm not filled with anxiety of what should be or how can I perform, like I'm doing the most or making the most of my day. It really is a slower pace of living. And I think also there have been so many mantras, affirmations. There's been some really tough times this past year, and just allowing myself to say, you know what, I'm doing something new. Of course, I'm going to make mistakes. I lost my car in October, and I could not afford to get another one. Unfortunately, in my relationship, because of some of the stuff my parents were doing, my ex had access and control of all my money. I did not have my name on it. And so when I left with no money. And that was really difficult. And I remember the first time I got on the bike to start, doing grocery shopping and stuff last fall. On the first day, I literally like fell down a little ditch. In the winter, I fell into the road with the ice. Like there were so many times where I was just so angry and being like, is progress happening? Is anything working? Is this even amounting to anything? Did I make the right decision? I think letting yourself get comfortable with the discomfort and know that, like, yes, the comfort zone has a point, but that is not your growth zone. Like, growth happens in the uncomfortable moments. And there's so much in my life now where I'm like, wow, like, yesterday I woke up, I went to the farmer's market, like, hopped on my bike, like, cute little 5-10 minute bike ride. Like, old me would not have been able to do that. Old me would have been paralyzed at the door. And like there was a lot of I'll admit like a lot of weirdness this winter where like I'd get fully dressed and ready and then I just couldn't leave my apartment. I would stand at the door like frozen. And that doesn't mean give up. It just means that, be gentle with yourself, try again. You're not going to get it on the first go or even the second. Like, and if you do, great, but healing isn't always super linear. There are ups, there are downs, and unfortunately, especially with trauma, the only way out is through. You can't just run away from the trauma. It will always catch back up to you.
What advice would you give to someone listening who knows they need to walk away from everything that is hurting them, but feels so terrified to do so?
Yeah, It is really hard. To give some context, I was in a relationship for I think it was 11 or 12 years. It started when I was in college. And I knew in the last 3 or 4 years that things were getting really bad. We had been trying couples counseling, but there were just so many moments where there was just such tension in the house. My ex was sleeping on the couch for really the last year or two. Leaving is truly so hard. I am the first person in my family to leave a relationship like that. Um, and the first summer, last summer was really, really difficult. I don't know if I would have gotten through without friends. But that being said, I definitely fell into substance abuse. I think one of the most powerful things that I am really happy I did do was I kept a journal. I started it last June. And man, reading back some of those pages, I'm like, oh my God, this is so cringy. This is so sad. And it's like, you need to see that to know that like you're progressing and getting better. I would definitely recommend finding your people, like just people who let you whine and complain and vent. Because when you leave a bad relationship, there's so much self-protecting that happens where you don't even realize. Like an example recently, I've been seeing somebody and they mentioned that they liked my nose. And I literally was on the verge of tears because my ex would call me Picasso face. That when you look at me from different angles, I look radically different. And like this is something to poke fun at. And here, like this person was, saying that my nose was cute. Um, and so, I think being aware of all of that, also not being afraid to rely on external resources. I was given the domestic violence phone number, the resources, and I didn't touch them because I thought, well, it wasn't that bad and it could have been so beneficial. The other thing I would say, if you can start a fuck you fund, if you just Google fuck you fund, there are so many resources about it. But essentially, what it is when you get into a relationship over time, you might combine finances, you may share them, and making sure you have a fund of money that, God forbid, things start going south, you can leave. Because I know people will look at me and say, "Oh, you're a successful artist." Starting over from scratch, I am probably $10,000 in debt right now, just from the past year. And I believe I'll get out of it. I know that I will. But leaving without any money was truly awful. And also, the other thing to know is if you're leaving, there is so much stigma about women leaving, in particular, women and non-binary people. And so much of that stigma is rooted in sexism, white supremacy, classism, and all of that is designed to discourage us from making these decisions. I mean, not to get too political, but like taking away reproductive autonomy, like we are forcing so many people to stay in situations, especially once kids are involved. I mean, I think one of the most heartbreaking things that happened in the last year was shortly after I left my ex, I texted my mom and told her, I think it was like a week after. And at first she was like, "Oh, maybe you guys will get back together." And I was like, "No, this has been planned for like 8 months now. Like I wasn't super sure I was going to do it until like a month or two before, but it had been crossing my mind over and over." Um, And my mom eventually texted me at some point last summer and said, "You had the strength to do what I never could." And I think that moment was so important because I had been so angry with the way that I grew up. I was angry that my mom let my dad live in our house and do what he did. But at the same time, I saw how hard and heartbreaking it was to leave, and all I had was two cats. I can't imagine doing it with three kids. Um, And so in a lot of ways, I am the first. I've noticed over the past year family members coming to me talking about, "Oh, I'm worried about this relationship. What's your advice on this?" And it's a tough position to be in, but at the same time, I'm grateful that I can rise to the occasion.
I'm incredibly impressed. And for anybody out there who knows that they should leave a relationship, whether it's a family relationship, a romantic relationship, platonic friendship, what have you, if you know you should leave, that's your inner voice. And the people who tell you not to listen to your inner voice are the people you should avoid. Your inner voice is important. Remember, my entire childhood, I was always told that I was too dramatic, that I felt too much. But no, I feel like I was not dramatic enough and that I didn't allow myself to feel. There will be people who will be able to hold those feelings and protect those feelings and embrace those feelings. And
Hmm.
those people are worth leaving whatever thing that's holding you back and going out to find them. I am so grateful that my mother-in-law left so that she could keep herself and my husband safe. I'm so incredibly grateful for her strength and her resilience and her abundant empathy for other people caught in horrible situations. And I am so grateful for my husband's ability this past weekend to reach out to family members that didn't have the courage to reach out to him first and was able to reconnect and feel loved and heal that little boy that was feeling abandoned for a reason. And
Hmm.
it brings me back to a conversation we had in the car. It was my birthday yesterday, and so we on our drive back because we drove 4 hours to San Angelo, Texas, to go see his great grandparents, and 4 hours back. And on the drive back, he wanted to stop at little spots to, make up for it. He was feeling very guilty, and that's okay. I also felt guilty because I was like, I feel selfish. It's my birthday, and I want to do fun things. And he's like, okay, well, let's do fun things. And we did. And we did it with Summer. And we found a curiosity shop. And he saw so many things that he really, really liked. And he's like, well, it's your birthday. And I'm like, yeah, it is my birthday. And also, you're allowed to find things that you love that you want to decorate our home with. Like, those things will make little you very happy, yes? He's like, but there's so much money. I'm like, but you're gonna look at it every single day and be excited. It's like, it looks like pickled eels, but it's eels that have been like, I don't know, they're in a jar. I don't know how to explain it. They're really
Oh,
cool
like
though.
taxidermied or like preserved.
Taxidermy, yeah, they're preserved eels in like liquid. And he was so excited. And he's like, I feel guilty because it's a lot of money. And I was like, well, would you feel guilty if I wanted that thing? He's like, no, not at all. I was like, well, why do you feel guilty that you want that thing? If it makes you happy, that's something that's amazing. We can always make more money, but we can't always make more memories. And every time you're going to look at those eels, you're going to think about the fun trip that we had, that we got to see your great grandparents, and how cool that these eels were. And I took a picture of him. I'm going to show you like his face when he saw the eels. There he is. Hold up. Let me make
Oh.
it focus. There he is. Look how excited he is with his eels.
Oh.
Let me show you little picture of Joey with a fish that he caught. Same face.
Yeah.
Same excitement for the thing. I'm like, of course you can have that. Of course, you don't even have to ask me. I'm not your parent. I'm just gonna enable you to get whatever you want every single time. And it brought me so much joy to see him so excited. I think those are the types of relationships that we should always pursue. And if you are not like actively, excited about each day of sharing memories with someone else, that is not a person that's speaking life into your life?
Hmm. I have to remind myself, I still have so much love for my ex. I always will. That does not mean I want to be back together. Like, I think there's a difference between loving someone and being in love with somebody. And I have to remind myself that by leaving, I gave myself a second chance. Like, I had to pretend for so long I didn't want kids, I didn't want to get married or do the whole wedding shebang. And like, actually, I do want to do those things. And by leaving, I am giving myself a second chance. And there is not a day that I don't wake up and I am so grateful because that second chance has been filled with so much love and care, and it's just getting started.
I like the bit, and it's just getting started because it is. I am so grateful for this episode. This was such a good episode. I'm so glad. Can you give, a shout out to your Instagram, to where we can find you on social media, your work? What are we, anything upcoming in your future that you want us to look out for?
Sure. So like I said, Liberal Jane across platforms. I post original artwork that I make. It is not AI, despite how much the trolls think it is. I've been doing this for how many years? I also have a sticker club. If you want to get monthly mail from me, that's definitely a cool thing to plug into. My other big thing, it's definitely probably a year or so off of happening. I've been working on a graphic novel for about 3 or 4 years. Um, and so that really is about, it touches on a lot of my trauma about being outed, about how conservative beliefs play out on the local level, in particular around trans and non-binary people. So look forward to that. And yeah, just be creating in the meantime.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story. I am so impressed and in awe of you. I'm so appreciative that you took the time out of your day to share. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. I'm about to do a little bye.
Bye with the kitty.
He's like, I'm ready to go back to sleep.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.